Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Ed today. Ed's an individual that reached out to me after he stumbled upon the Bigfoot Society YouTube channel, and he has some interesting things to share from his past years. So Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, we've got some really interesting ground to cover today, Ed, and you do actually have a very interesting background as well. And, you know, we were talking about that a little bit before the show started. And I'd love if you could spend a few minutes kind of sharing about that background. And I think it plays in very well with the other things that you'll be sharing right afterwards.
Right. Okay. Not to go too deep into the weeds, but I was right after high school when I was 19, I joined the Army. I was in the infantry for about 8.5 years. And the reason I think that's important is because I'm a United States government trained observer. I'm a Desert Storm veteran, and my job was to destroy enemy tanks. And so I know how to look for things that are trying to hide from me very well, either my eyes, binoculars, thermal scopes, all that kind of stuff. That's what I did for 8.5 years is look for things to shoot, basically. As far as the Desert Storm thing goes, I didn't have any Bigfoot, anything happen out there, but I did have some other things that are kind of related. I'm not sure it had something to do with balls of light. After getting out of the Army, I returned to Hawaii. I was stationed in Hawaii in the Army, so I went back over there for other reasons. And I became a police officer over there. And I was a police officer for 25.5 years. And if anybody is a trained observer in this world, it's police officers. They see things that other people will never see. Just driving down the road, I told my wife, "Did you see that? Did you see that guy? Did you see that?" And nobody ever sees it. And they're like, "How do you see all this stuff?" I was like, it's you can't unlearn it. And then the last thing that I like to throw in there as far as my, being able to see things, I'm a licensed private pilot. And you constantly have to look for things. I mean, yeah, you're up in the air. You're not going to see Bigfoot in the air, but you're constantly looking for anything and everything. And then if you're playing, you got to look on the ground too for places to land, just in case your plane craps out. So you're constantly looking for this kind of stuff. So, and on top of that, I've been in the woods ever since I was a kid. I grew up just south of Atlanta, and I retired back in 2017 and moved up here to North Georgia. I live in Towns County, right outside of a little bitty town called Hiawassee. And I live up here on 10 acres on the side of a mountain. I got like 2 neighbors, and if it's summertime, I can't even see them. So that's basically my background. I just turned 61 this month. So, I get out in the woods as much as I can, but I'm not up and down these mountains like I would be when I was a kid. I'm going to go kind of in a reverse chronological order of why I'm on there here today, and I'm going to go from the latest one back in time years ago, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when I retired in 2017 and we moved up here about a year, so maybe 2018, I took up turkey hunting. And for the other guys up here they're listening, turkey hunting is one of the hardest. That's one of the hardest animals there is to kill. I mean, you got to just sit there and be completely still. And most of the places that I turkey hunt up here are within the Chattahoochee National Forest. So the Chattahoochee National Forest is, of course, regulated by the federal government. And within the National Forest are things called wildlife management areas. And those are maintained and regulated by the state of Georgia. So the main one that I hunt in up here, and it's only about 5-6 miles away from my house, really, as a crow flies. It's called the Swallow Creek WMA. And I finally killed a turkey this past year in 2024 right at the end of the season, which was, I think, May. So right, say May 15th was the end of the season. May 16th, they start, I think it's called a fox and bobcat or a fox and hog or something like that. Anyway, for the last 2 weeks of the month, you can hunt, fox and bobcats. And if there's anything in season, you can hunt hogs. And I like to hunt hogs. So I went back up to this food plot where I had killed my turkey. Now, this food plot is on the end of a road. It's called Mill Creek Road. It's one way in and it's one way out. It's a gravel road, and it's 2 miles up to the end where I was hunting. And so the reason I tell you that is when I drove in, I went up there that day to look for pig signs or whatever. And there was nobody else up there because there's not really anywhere you could hide a vehicle. You can barely pull off the road at some of these little spots they have for you to park at the food plots. And there was no other vehicles on that road that day. And it was probably, I don't know, 3-4 in the afternoon. It was a nice day, sunny day. And I went up there and I had my AR-15 just in case I run across a pig. And you could drive almost up onto this field. It's about 100 meters, 100 yards in either direction. And this field is in between 2 ridge lines. There's one that's the closest mountaintop is maybe 1/8 of a mile north of the field. And then there's another one about 1/4 of a mile away. And there's no trails or anything going up off of this field. It's thick as peanut butter up there. I've heard some of your other guests on here from North Georgia talk about the mountain laurel. And if you want to get through it, you got to crawl under it. Well, they're not lying. That stuff is thick. And so I was up there, and I didn't see any signs of hogs or anything, which is another point that I need to come back to later. But while I'm standing there, from the closest ridge line, I hear, just out of the blue, 2 consecutive wood knocks. And the only way I can describe it is this: somebody was up there, had a Louisville Slugger baseball bat or something, and just whacked a hardwood tree like twice as hard as they could. And I'm just standing there in shock because honestly, all my life I had been like on the fence about the whole Bigfoot thing. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh my God, did I just hear what I thought I heard? And about 10 seconds later, on the other ridge, which I said, it's got to be 1/4 mile away, I hear another knock, a return knock, an answer sort of. It wasn't as loud because it was further away, but it was a wood knock. And so I just stood there for a minute and I was in shock, basically, because I've been hunting up there for several years, and I've been all around the world. And like I said, I kind of didn't really know what to believe about this, but I heard this, and I'm thinking, there's no trails going up there. I didn't see any trucks or cars on my way up there. So could it have been a person up there? Maybe, technically, I guess, but they would have had to hike all the way up the road for 2 miles, and then they would have had to hike for the better part of a day at least to get up there. And then their buddy that answered the call would have had to hike. I don't know how long it would take you to hike to that other location, because there's nothing over there. I mean, they have signs on the side of the road that says wilderness area, and they're not kidding. It's seriously thick. I'm betting nobody's been over there since the Native Americans, probably, because most of the guys that hunt out here, they're like me, and they're kind of lazy. They don't want to, bust bush any more than they have to. That's why we hunt on these big fields that the state makes for us. You could just walk right out there and sit on the edge of them. So to get up there and to just randomly, I don't know if you're be hoaxing somebody or what, but I just can't believe that people would have walked all the way up there. They would have had to take backpacks and stayed up there for the night, because there's no way they're going to get down that mountain in the dark like that. There's just no way. So I'm just standing there in shock, like, what else could it be? The only other big thing that lives out there that would have the strength to do that would be a bear, and they can't hold a stick like that and beat on the side of a tree. So I was just in shock, and I decided to get in my truck and leave. So I got in my truck, and I went home, and I told my wife about it. Quiet. And she doesn't really care that much about it. And so the next day, I go down to the dump nearby to dump my trash, and there's a gentleman that works there, and he's always been working there. And so I thought, if anybody knows what's going on up here, maybe this guy does. So I asked him, I said, hey, how long have you lived here? He goes, oh, I've lived here all my life. And I said, do you go out and hunt and fish? He goes, yeah, I used to quite a bit. So I asked him the same question I asked everybody. I said, what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen out? And before I could finish it, he goes, I've seen Bigfoot. And my jaw just dropped, and I was like, what? And he said, yeah, I was driving up to Hayesville, North Carolina the other day, and I seen this thing walking through this guy's yard. And he went on to tell me about it, and I thought, oh my God, and then he tells me that he's seeing these giant tracks right outside the dump over here. That dump's only like 3 miles from my house. That kind of gave me the chills. I was like, oh, that's just great, because right across from my property here is National Forest. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres of it. I can just sit there and look across, and nobody lives up there because it's National Forest. So I was like, oh my God, this is the only guy I've talked to that has, told me they've seen stuff like that. So later that day, I couldn't stand it. I had to go back up there just for my own, I don't know why. I just felt like I felt the need to go back up there. And the funny thing is, I took a couple of apples with me. I thought, I'll just put them on a stump up there in case they're watching, and just let them know that I'm a good guy, and please don't try and kill me while I'm out hunting. I'm not here to mess with you. So I'm driving back up that road again, Mill Creek Road, and I get within about 20 yards of the little turnoff where I need to go up to that field. And now there is a tree bent across the road, not broken, not blown down by the roots or anything. I mean, it was bent. That tree had to be as big around as my leg. I think I sent you a picture of it. So I stopped right there, and I was like, what in the world is this? This wasn't here yesterday when I left. And there was no, rough weather overnight or anything. It was just, calm. It was spring weather. We didn't have any windstorms. And none of the other trees around this tree were molested or touched. They were all fine. And the base of this tree where it was growing had to be a good, 10, 12 feet off the road down the side of the hill. And it stretched all the way across the road. And so I got up and thought, I got to see how this thing is being held in place. And the funny thing is, there was nothing holding this tree down. It looked, it should have just sprung right back up, you would think. And I pulled on it and everything, and I couldn't get it to pop out. There was, like I said, there was nothing holding it. And so for a person to be able to pull that tree over, you'd need like a football team of gorillas out there, and somebody would climb way up that tree with a rope, and a whole bunch of guys pulling on it, or a winch, and then still, I don't know how. To this day, I don't know how it's being held down. I haven't gone back up there since, but I thought that was really odd. That right after I heard those knocks, the next day I come up here and there's this tree across the road, which I've seen on some of the different shows and stuff like that. And I've encountered that one other time up here when I was out hunting with my son-in-law on the Chattahoochee part of the forest. It was a road that we were walking down, the service road, and there was another big tree just pulled all the way across the road like that, just out of the blue. None of the other trees around it were affected. And I just kind of put it in the back of my mind, going, that's weird, but whatever. But now I kind of think back about it and I thought, well, who knows? So that was really odd. And the next thing, going back, let's see, about a year or two ago, my son-in-law and I were hunting hogs up there in the same area on the same road, that Mill Creek Road. We were just at a different food plot. There's one at the very beginning where you park, and then it takes you about a half hour to walk up to this field. It's pretty far up the mountain. And I think it was in it was small game season. It was like August. In Georgia here, the hunting season for small game opens in August, I think. And so you got to take a 22 or something like that up there. But you can, like I say, if there's anything in season, they let you hunt hogs. So we were up there looking for hogs. And we walked way up there with our camouflage and our orange vest and everything. And so we finally get up to this field. It's a pretty good sized field. And I told him, I'm going to post up down here on the bottom. I'm going to a tree to set up against. And he went further up to the top of the field. And I see him disappear up into the bushes, and he was going to wait up there. And so we said, and the thing about up there is there's no phone service anywhere. So you can't text, call, nothing. Your phones just don't work up there. So I'd been sitting over there, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, sitting against this tree. And my rifle had a scope on it, so I could watch the whole field. And about that time, I see him coming out from the top of the field with his orange vest. And he keeps stopping and looking back up the mountain as he's walking down towards me. And about every 20 feet, he stops and he looks back up again like he's looking at something. I kept wondering, what was he looking at? So I came out, got on the road. It was starting to get late, and we forgot flashlights. So when he comes down there, he says, were you beating on a tree down here trying to signal me? And I said, what? And he goes, I heard somebody, it sounded like you were down here with a big wooden branch or something smacking a tree, and I thought you were trying to signal me to come back because we don't have phone service. I said, no, dude, I haven't moved. I've been sitting here, quiet as church mice. And he goes, well, I heard it. It was coming from down here by you. I didn't hear a thing. That's the odd thing about it. I didn't hear anything. I didn't fall asleep either. And then he tells me, he said, when I got up and started walking out, right after I heard that noise, it sounded like somebody was further up the mountain yelling at something. Except he said he couldn't understand what they were saying. It wasn't like, they were enunciating words or anything. It was just like, he thought initially that somebody who had hunting dogs up there maybe and was yelling for their dogs trying to find them. And I told him, well, there's nobody else up here but us. There's no other trucks down here on the road. So how would they get in here? Even if they came from the other side of the ridge, I mean, man, they would have been walking for days to get up there. And he goes, yeah, but he goes, I didn't hear any dogs, but he said it sounded like a person yelling. And I said, man, that's kind of creepy because once again, technically somebody could have walked up there. I've never seen anybody do it. Everybody drives in there, but I thought, it's starting to get dark, dude. We forgot our flashlights. Let's get on down the mountain because we've got really small caliber rifles. So that was the next thing that I thought was really odd, that he heard wood knocks that I didn't hear. And then he hears something up there yelling. Now, this food plot was within a mile of the other one where I had first heard those knocks that I just told you about. One of the other weird things about this area that I have encountered while I'm up there, and I'm not sure if it has anything to do with Sasquatch so much or not, but I've heard other people talk about it, is these balls of light. I have seen those things going through the woods out there. Like, if I go turkey hunting, you can hunt legally a half hour before sunrise. Well, like I said, it's first come, first serve on the spots up there. So I'll go up there an hour or two early. I'll be up there like 3:30 in the morning parked just so I can get my spot. And I'll just sit in my truck and wait. And I've seen these lights going through the woods or down the road. It looks about the size of a softball. And it's not like a flashlight or it's projecting light. It's just a light. And they just kind of, phase out as fireflies or anything. It's a steady light.
Ed, we are getting some really weird feedback. I don't know if you're aware of that on your side, or
I don't hear anything.
Really. It was when you were trying to describe the balls of light, all of a sudden it just went crazy on your side of the phone. I don't know if you could restate that part at all.
Okay, yeah, let me move over here to the other end of this room.
Sure.
Yeah, so like I said, there was these balls of light up there in this area where I've heard the wood knocks and everything, and I see them. I've seen them a couple of times going through the woods, and or down a road. Like they're about the size of maybe a baseball or a softball, and they're just. The first time I saw one, I thought it was a guy on a bicycle coming through, and then he never passed me, and I jumped out there and turned on my flashlight, and there was nothing there, and I was like, "What was that?" It was a ball of light, and then a couple other times I'd be sitting on a stand, waiting for pigs or whatever, and I see these things moving through there, and I rub my eyes and I see them again. I'm like, I don't know what that is. That's the most bizarre thing. But I've heard other people talk about that in connection with Sasquatch. And one of my neighbors up here, we have a campground close by where I live. And one of the guys over there said he's seen those down by this creek that's next to my property. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy. I thought I was the only one. But he goes, no, I've seen them. I've seen these balls of light. So we don't really know what that is. I saw something like that in Desert Storm while I was out there. A ball of light, me and a couple other guys, and it was just in this big thing of wood. It was like I said, I don't think there's Bigfoot in Saudi Arabia, but that's the only other place I saw these lights like that, and they just disappeared. It was really odd. One of the other things was my son-in-law and I. So my son-in-law and my stepdaughter moved here from Hawaii. My wife is from Hawaii, and so they moved up here to live with us. And he's a big hog hunter. That's why I ended up, going out and learning how to hunt hogs and stuff, because that's all I have to hunt in Hawaii is hogs. And one of the other times and this is something that one of your other guests have noted that they experienced, and when they said this, it just came rushing back to me, and I remembered it. But my son-in-law and I, we were hog hunting off of Highway 180 up here, right near Brasstown Bald. Brasstown Bald is the highest mountain in Georgia. So you get there via Highway 180. And it's all national forest out there, which means you can hunt out there. It's a public hunting area. And there's a couple of roads and stuff that you can park and get out there. And so he and I had found a place where the hogs had just been tearing the the grass up on the side of the road. It looks like someone goes through with a plow and just plows everything up. So we had gone out there and we were following this hog signs down this old service road. It was a good enough road where you could walk on it. You couldn't drive because there was little trees growing up in it and everything, but we could tell the hogs had been through there. And we had been walking, I don't know, maybe half hour or so. Like I said, I'm not as young as I used to be, and he's in his 30s. So we came across an area where there's a tree had fallen over the road, and I thought, this is perfect. I can sit down and take a break. I told him, I said, I'm going to sit down and take a break for a few minutes. And he was like, okay, I'm going to go on up ahead, and I'll be back in like 15 minutes. I said, okay, great. So I'm sitting there, and after, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes or so, the only way I can describe it is up the side of the mountain a little ways, maybe about 50 yards up from where I was sitting. It sounded like an elephant just stomped his foot on the ground as hard as it could, or like someone was way up in a tree and dropped a huge bowling ball or something. I mean, I felt it go through my body. It was just this big thud, like boom. And it scared me. I jumped off that log. The safety came off my rifle. I looked up there, and I didn't see anything. But, I mean, it was just this big thud, like there was an invisible elephant up there, and it had just stomped the ground. So the whole time I'm waiting for my son-in-law to come back because, like I said, there's no phone reception out in these areas. So I'm standing there the whole time with my rifle just watching, like, what was that? So he finally comes back. I told him what happened. And we went up to the point where it sounded like it came from. And there's nothing disturbed. There are no, I mean, if a limb had fallen out of a tree, you'd hear it coming down. I've heard trees fall. I've heard limbs fall out of trees. And you always hear it busting other branches on the way down or something. But when it hits the ground, it'll crack. That's not what this was. This was just this big thud. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. It's just this big thud, something hitting the ground like that. And we went up there and looked around, and there was nothing. There was no trees, recently broken off or anything. So I'm not sure what that was or how. I have no idea what it was. But I've heard a couple of your other guys that was up here in North Georgia that had described something similar to that. And I was like, man, I've heard that. And it just creeps you out because you look around, you're like, what was that? Just out of the blue. So that was one of the other things. And like I said, I'm not going to say any of this was Bigfoot, but I'm not going to say it wasn't because I don't know what else it could have been. I mean, bears don't make, the biggest thing that lives out here that I'm aware of, that I have seen, I've got one on my webcam, not webcam, my game cam out in my front yard. I got a bear on it that's easily 600-700 pounds. But I don't even think that bear could make a noise like that unless he was way up in 100 foot up in a tree and just fell out, in which case I would have seen him, which I didn't. So there was that. That's a really odd thing. The other thing I've experienced, I check my notes here, was probably back in 2008. And this one is really, to me, this is the most bizarre of all of them because this is where I grew up, south of Atlanta. This is basically suburbia. I mean, there's a lot of woods and stuff around. This is right at my parents' house. And there's some big swamps that looks like Cambodia back there. I used to play in when I was growing up, hunting and fishing. But there's a lot. It's a very populated area. And I was there. Oh, let's see, I think it was May. It was my parents' wedding anniversary. I was there visiting them. I had flown in from Hawaii. And at that point in time, my mom and dad still didn't have air conditioning in their house. And it was kind of warm for May. And I was sleeping in my old bedroom. And that room had a big window that went from the floor to the ceiling. And then back behind the house was woods for about, an easy mile before you hit the next subdivision. Like I said, creeks and swamps and stuff. And I'm laying there asleep, and something wakes me up, and it was the most ungodly sound I have ever heard in my life. The only way I can describe it is if you took a roaring African lion and a silverback mountain gorilla roaring as loud as he can, and then you take that T-Rex from that Jurassic Park movie, that sound that T-Rex makes, and you combine all three of those, and you run it through like a big Marshall amp, like a Kiss concert, and you turn the amp all the way up, and you let that noise go for about a good 15 seconds. I could feel it through my bones. I mean, my body was vibrating when I heard this thing. And it did it 2 or 3 times. And I had a .357 Magnum revolver on the nightstand next to me. And I didn't even think about reaching over for it because I was like, oh my God, whatever that is, this isn't even going to tickle it. Because to be able to make a sound like that, you would need some gigantic lungs. I mean, I don't know how big, but it just went on and on, just like, rah! I mean, just went on and on, at least a good 15 seconds each time. And it did it 2 or 3 times. And it sounded like it was only, I don't know, maybe 100 yards down to my parents' backyard. It scared me so bad that I just lay there and I tried not to move. I mean, I did that thing where I opened my mouth and I tried to breathe real shallow. So, because I thought this thing could walk right up to the window. The only thing between me and it is the screen from the window. And it could just, pop that out and be in here. And I couldn't believe it. I'd never heard anything like that in my life. It was horrifying. And like I said, it was like if you took that sound and you pumped it, if you were in front of the speakers up on a stage at a Kiss concert and they turned the speakers all the way up, that's what it felt like going through my body. And I grew up in those woods. I had never heard anything like that. And so finally it stopped. I don't know. It made that sound, that scream, howl, yell thing 2 or 3 times. And it finally stopped. And I just kept laying there listening as hard as I could, just waiting to see if I could hear anything moving. And I never heard anything else. And I finally fell asleep. And so the next morning I get up and I asked my dad, I said, did you hear that thing last night? And he goes, I didn't hear anything. I was like, oh my God, you must have been in a coma. How could you not hear that? It was ungodly. So I didn't go down there in the woods to look around that day. It was just me. Like I said, the .357 was the biggest gun I had at the time over there. And I wasn't going to get my dad to go down there with me because he was getting older. And so I had one more night to stay there. And the next night, it happened again. I mean, it was just unbelievable. The volume on this thing and how long it just kept going. And in my mind, I'm like, how big do you have to be to generate that much noise for that long of a period of time? I mean, a human being, you could scream as loud as you could for maybe, I don't know, 10 seconds or so, and then you'd be like out of breath. But this thing just kept going and going. It was just unbelievable. So the next morning I got up and asked my dad again, did you hear it? He goes, yeah, I heard it last night. I said, What is that? He goes, I don't know. I've never heard anything like that in my life. And my dad was like me. He'd been basically to all the states in the country, and he was in the military. He'd been around the world, and same thing. It's like, you've never heard anything like that. You've been all the way around the world. You've experienced a lot of stuff, and for that's just so crazy bizarre. So my sister came to pick me up later that afternoon. I was going to go to her house, and I told her, I said, come with me. We got to go down the woods behind the house. I want to see if there's any tracks down there, because there was like a real sandy area where the water bubbled up out of the ground down there, and I had the gun stuck in the back of my pocket. And so she's going down the hill with me. She goes, why do I have to go with you? I said, in case something happens to one of us, the other one can run back and get some help or tell people what's going on. And she goes, well, why do you get to carry the gun? It's my gun. I'm not letting you have it. But anyway, so that was just, I never figured out what that was. And I can't say that it was Bigfoot, but it's, I don't know what it was. I mean, it was unbelievable, whatever it was. It was just crazy, crazy loud. And then one of the other things, this was, when I was in the Army, I was stationed up in Fort Lewis, Washington. And this was before I went to Desert Storm. So I think it was in about 1990. So the way the divisions in the Army works, or at least the way they used to work, was about every month a unit would be the duty battalion, and you got stuck doing all the dirty jobs around the base, picking up trash and mowing grass in different places and all kinds of crap like that. So we were on that duty, and the first sergeant gave my platoon sergeant, who was a guy I was pretty close with, we were pretty good friends, he gave him they call it a detail, that this one training area needed to they call it a police call. All that means is you're going to go out and pick up trash. If God didn't put it there, you pick it up. So there was this training area somewhere out on the outskirts of the base that needed a 2-day police call. So we're going to go 2 days in a row and pick up trash. So it was me, the platoon sergeant, and this private who was our driver. We had a Humvee, and so we drive way out there, and we got these trash bags and everything, and all our MREs to eat. And they had a gate across this area, believe it or not, and you had to unlock it and go inside. And if you've never been up to the Pacific Northwest, especially the Tacoma, Seattle area, I think it's a temperate rainforest is what they call it. It's like Jurassic Park back in there. The trees are just gigantic. They have ant hills that are 3 or 4 feet tall, made out of pine needles, and it's beautiful. There's ferns that are. I'm 6'1", and these ferns just towered over me. The only thing I could think of was just Jurassic Park. So we pull in there, and we immediately can tell that this is just a sham job. There's not any trash back here to pick up. Nobody's been back here since Moses was a private. So we figured, okay, we basically get 2 days off. We just sit out here, hang out, and as long as first sergeant doesn't find out that we were just out here, BSing around, we're fine. We get 2 days off. We're away from the company. So the three of us decide we're going to go out and walk around, because I told the platoon sergeant, I said, Bob, this would be a great place to bring the platoon up here for like jungle training, because it basically looks like a big jungle. And he said, yeah, so let's go and check out the area. So we're walking around, and we find this game trail going up. It's not really that mountainous over there, but there's some pretty good hills. We're going up this hill, and at some point across this game trail, we come across this big pile of poop. And it looked like a person, except if it was a person that was like 10 feet tall, maybe. It wasn't like, regular person poop. It was gigantic person poop. It wasn't a dog. It wasn't a coyote or a wolf or a bear. I know what all that stuff looks like. That wasn't what this was. This stuff was huge. And we're all just standing there looking at it. And we're looking at each other. And we're all thinking the same thing. I know we are. Like, oh my God, this can't be, Bigfoot. But that's what we're thinking, I know. Because we're like, what else could it be up here? It's not deer, elk, or anything else like that. Their poop doesn't look anything like that. And so we're looking at it. And we thought, well, maybe we should head back already, because none of us wanted to admit to being scared or anything, but, there's no point in just challenging whatever's out there. We didn't have any guns or anything. So on the way back, I told the platoon sergeant, I said, hey, I got a 9mm pistol. I think I'm going to bring it tomorrow just for our own safety. And he goes, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So we kind of stayed close to the Humvee the rest of the day. And the next day, we come back out there with the pistol this time. We feel a lot safer with a, even though it's a little 9mm pistol, it's better than nothing. So we go in, we start to explore in the opposite direction, going down the hill. And there's a river down there. And I don't remember the name of the river to save my life, but it was a pretty good size piece of water. I don't know, it was maybe 50 feet across, and it was running pretty good. It had salmon in it. It was, that kind of a river. It had salmon, because as we walked down the river, we found a salmon that was kind of almost up on the bank, but just barely in the water. And you could tell it was still fresh. It just, it wasn't rotten or anything. And the thing about it was, there was this huge bite mark on the belly of it. And we were standing there looking at that going, what do you think bit that big chunk of salmon? Because it wasn't like a bear has a kind of a pointed muzzle, a coyote or a wolf, they got their kind of canine shaped muzzle. This wasn't shaped like that. This was shaped like a person, except a person whose head would have been 2 or 3 times bigger than ours. That's what it looked like. It was kind of a half moon shape. And so we're standing there looking at that, and we're thinking about the poop from the day before. And we walked maybe about 10 or 15 yards further down the river. And on the other side of the river, the bank went up drastically. I mean, almost like a cliff, up about, 50, 60 feet up. And there was a lot of brush on the side of it. And as we going down, we heard something. I don't know what it was, up there in that brush moving around. And the next thing you know, there's rocks hitting the river right out in front of us. Like if, I don't know if somebody was throwing rocks, and they weren't, like basketballs or anything. They were just maybe the size of your fist or something. But so I'm not sure if whatever it was scrambling up that mountain, which I guess a person could get up it, but it would be really hard. I wouldn't have, even back then I was young and, in the Army and everything, I wouldn't have wanted to try it. But we weren't sure if it was something scrambling up there and kicking rocks loose. But I don't think so, because they would have hit closer to the far shore. And most of them were hitting out in the middle or on our side of the shoreline. And so we were like, we couldn't see what it was. But when that happened, we put that together with the salmon that's just right upstream a few yards, with that giant bite out of it, and then the poop from the day before. And we were like, oh, that's it. I took off running up the side of the mountain. And the other guy was like, hey, wait for us. And I was like, why? He said, because you got the gun. And so we got back up to the Humvee, and we stayed up there like for the rest of the day. And we didn't really talk a lot. We ate our lunch and stuff, and it was almost like we were on guard. We were sitting around and standing around right outside the vehicle and just watching, waiting to see if something was going to show up out there, and it never did. And when the time came, we went back to the company area, and we didn't really discuss it with anybody. But it was really, really odd. Like I said, I can't say that it was Bigfoot, but I've never seen any poop like that since, except at the Bigfoot Museum over here in Cherry Log, Georgia, which is about half hour down the road from me. They've got I don't know if it's fake poop or whatever it is, but supposedly Bigfoot poop on display. And I looked at that, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, that looks just like what I saw up in Washington. And since Washington is, kind of the Bigfoot central up there, according to everything else, that's the first thing I thought of. So that's basically some of the stuff that I've experienced.
Ed, that's incredible. My goodness, thank you for sharing. I was actually going to ask you the question you pretty much just answered, which is, what was the orientation of the scat that you saw? And it sounds like it was kind of in a straight line, because I'm picturing what's at the museum.
Yeah, exactly. It was right there on that trail of all places, and like I said, there's no homeless people out there. It was a military training area on the base, and it was just plain as day. We were just walking, and boom, there it is. I mean, you couldn't miss it. I love to hunt and fish, so I'm out in the woods a lot out here, and I see bear scat all the time, and it doesn't look anything like that. Hogs, I've never seen anything like that ever again, except for that stuff that they have in this little museum over here. But that was kind of bizarre. And the whole tree thing, I've now that I remember, right down here on my property, I go deer hunting. Like here's the other thing I wanted to get to about the pigs and the deer. On the wildlife management areas, I've been up there, like I said, turkey hunting. I always see turkeys out there. There's tons of them out there. And up until about 2 years ago, there was lots of hogs out there. I mean, you would see signs of them even driving down the road out here in the mountains. There's always a grassy area on the median, the side of the road, whatever. And you can tell where the hogs have been, because it looks like someone took a rotiller and just went out there and tilled up a garden plot. Even in the woods, they go through there, and there'll be 15 or 20 of them, and they'll just take their noses and they just turn the earth over and just tear it up. So basically, every time I would go, or me and my son-in-law would go out here into the WMAs, or even the National Forest, we would find spots. It was pretty easy. Just you go out there, start walking, and you'll find a spot where the hogs have been, until about 2 years ago. And suddenly, we just didn't see hogs anymore. There was no signs anywhere. I mean, I used to get them on my trail cameras over here on my property. We even sat down here at the bottom part of my yard a year or two ago with our bows one night in the summer and our green lights, because we had about a 200-something pound hog kept coming through. And then suddenly they were just gone. And I just wondered. I thought, well, what? And I've never seen a deer on those WMAs. Not maybe one. I don't even go deer hunting over there. I come down here on my property, or my next door neighbor lets me hunt on their property. But I have never seen a deer other than maybe just one on there. And then the hogs just suddenly, it's like I don't know, it's like Star Trek came and beamed them up or something. And after hearing those wood knocks up there, I kind of wondered, are these things nomadic? Did they move into this area, and then did they eat all the hogs, or did they run all the hogs off? And then, there was one other thing I almost forgot. When I was talking about the turkey hunting, I met a guy a couple of years ago out here. We met up. We were out hunting turkey in the same area, and we became friends, and we were up there in the Chattahoochee Wildlife Management Area. And we had decided to basically call it a morning. And we knew that there was these two guys camping at this one camp spot. And this spot is the only place up on the mountain where you can get a phone signal. So they call it the phone booth, oddly enough. And they had a fire going. And so we kind of meandered over there and started up a conversation with them, and kind of an excuse just to stand by the fire because it was cold that day. And so I was going to ask them the same thing. Whenever I meet anybody out here in the woods, hunting or fishing, I always ask them, "Are you from up here?" And usually it's always yes. And I'll ask them kind of beat around the bush. What's the weirdest thing you've seen out here in the woods? And I'll usually ask them, "Fine, have you ever seen Bigfoot?" And they always laugh. Everybody laughs and says no. But these guys were a little bit different. So they were camping. Apparently they come up here every year to get away from their wives for a couple of days. And so while we're standing there petting the dogs and standing by the fire, I asked the guys, what's the weirdest thing you guys have ever seen up here? And this one guy tells me, back down here in such and such hollow, which it had a specific name and I don't remember what it was. He said, I was hunting back there and I've heard children laughing, giggling, and there's no children back there. I thought, well, that's pretty creepy. So I don't know if that's a residual, Native American thing, or is it juvenile Sasquatch that he doesn't see, and I don't know if they laugh or not, because I was listening to a different podcast the other night, and there was another guy from up here in Georgia, and he said he heard one sound like it was singing, which I was like, singing? Wow, that's different. So I guess if you could sing, possibly you could maybe make something that sounds like laughter. I don't know, but he seemed to think it was a kind of a haunting sort of thing. I was like, okay, well, that's kind of strange. I'll try to avoid that area. And then he tells me, he said, I haven't seen Bigfoot, but, and he goes, you remember when you was a kid, you used to watch the Pink Panther cartoon? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, remember how the Pink Panther walked? He had that funny, goofy walk. I was like, yeah. He said, well, I was down here coming off of whatever highway, which is right up in this area somewhere. I forget which one it was. And he said, and this thing stepped out on the road, and he said it had to be 7+ foot tall, had a real long tail, walked on 2 legs, and he said it walked across the road. He goes, the funny thing about it was it walked just like that Pink Panther cartoon. It had that little bebop kind of thing as it walked across the road. And I'm looking at him, I was like, what? And I'm thinking, is this guy just, yanking my chain? But he was deadly serious. And he said, it went across the road. He goes, I turned around, I came back. He goes, I thought there was some kids or somebody up here playing a joke on me, and I wanted to catch him. So he says, I turned around, came back, and he goes, I stopped where I saw it going to the woods. And he goes, I didn't see anything. And I thought, you're serious? And I just, just BS. And he goes, no, I'm deadly serious. I saw this. I thought, okay, that sounds like one of those Dogman things, because I've never heard or seen anything about a Sasquatch with a big, long, bushy tail. But anyway, so that's something else that someone has related to me up here. And then, like I said, the guy down here at the dump that told me that he'd seen the one in Hazel in a guy's yard. And he said it was like bending over, picking something up as it walked by. And this was like 11 o'clock in the day, in daytime. And I said, well, the thing about that is, if somebody was trying to hoax somebody, people driving by, or say the guy that lived at that house, they're taking their life in their own hands, because everybody up here is armed to the teeth. I mean, everybody up here in the mountains has guns. It's just a culture. We're not out looking for a fight. That's just, everybody carries guns. And sooner or later, there's going to be some good old boy, redneck, and I don't use that as a disparaging term. I'm a redneck myself, I'm pretty sure. But sooner or later, you know, there's going to be somebody sees one and goes, there's a Bigfoot, and I'm going to shoot it, and they're going to shoot at it. So if you put on a big furry costume and start walking through people's front yards trying to scare them, either that guy that owns the house is going to come out and put some hot lead on you, or somebody's going to stop their F-150 pickup on the side of the road and pull out his rifle and put some lead on you. You know, so it's either that, a crazy person, which you'd have to be mental to do something like that, or it was real. So I don't know, but that's what he told me. And then the other neighbor over here where the campground is, there was a guy over there, and he's from Florida, and he claimed that he was going through the Everglades, and there was one standing right out on the side of the road. And he said traffic came to a stop, and him and his wife both saw it. So when I talked to him about it, he doesn't laugh. He's like, yeah, I saw one. And I was like, well, I'm not the only person that, you know, encounters this. But then, so this year, like I said, I deer hunt back here right on my property, and my next door neighbors have given me permission to hunt their property. So during the rut, I was putting up cameras back there trying to, you know, see what time the bucks are coming through. So I go down through there every day and check these cameras so I know what's what in the woods right in that area. So I go down there one day, and there's a tree that's about, I don't know, about as big around as my arm, maybe about 15, 20 feet tall. And I thought it had been pulled, well, I guess it was pulled over, but it was pulled over and broken off down by the base. And I thought, now what in the world would have done that? Because there wasn't any windstorms or anything last night, and nobody else goes down there and hunts but me. I mean, I'm the only person that goes down there. Now, I guess it could have been a bear that did it. I guess, maybe. I never seen bears pulling trees over like that before, but I guess it could have been a bear. But I don't know, because down in that area is where the guy said he saw the balls of light. And then the next thing you know, I got this tree down there that's pulled down out of millions of trees. There's just this one tree right there. And it's along the avenue that I was traveling to go check the cameras, which is kind of creeps me out, because it's almost like in your face, like, hey, I'm letting you know that I'm over here. So and it may sound strange to people, I don't know, but it makes me feel better, because I don't know. I like I said, I listen to all this stuff. I see the shows on TV, and some people think that they're telepathic and whatnot. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't know. But just in case they are, just on the odd off chance that they are, when I get out of my truck to go hunting now, I say a little, maybe a prayer, but a little message to them in my mind. You know, I'm like, hey, I'm not here to bother you, your family. I'm just out here hunting deer, pigs, turkey, whatever the case may be. I don't really want to see you. I don't want to be bothered by you. And as soon as I'm done, I'll take all my trash with me and I'll leave. So I don't know if that helps or not, but it can't hurt. You know what I mean? So I do that. But yeah, so I don't know. Like I said, with the hogs, they're just suddenly disappeared up here. So I don't know if Bigfoot is wiped them out, or if they've decided Bigfoot is something they don't want to deal with, so they've left the area. But I haven't seen one up here really in about 2 years, and I think that's just so bizarre, because there's not too many guys up here that actually hunt hogs. I asked guys that too. Hey, do you see any hogs? Do you hunt hogs? I only met like one or two other guys that actually, dedicated to hunt hogs. And I'm pretty sure they didn't wipe them all out, because there must be thousands, hundreds of thousands of them up here probably. They breed like roaches.
It's extremely interesting. You have a ton of really interesting anecdotes from all over the place. I had no idea we were really going to go all over the place. This has been a very cool conversation. It's very unique to have someone on the show that, or at least for my show, I've only been able to talk to a handful of individuals that have been involved with out there in Fort Lewis in Washington. It's such an interesting area out there.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy out there. It's I'd never seen anthills like that in my life until I first got out there, and you could just see the ants crawling all over it. The whole thing just pulsates.
Oh man, no way. Ugh, yeah.
That's the only place I ever slept in an igloo overnight too. It snowed on us. Started snowing one night, and we didn't have tents, and they didn't like us sleeping inside the vehicle, so we actually built a snow shelter, and a whole squad of us got in there like sardines, and we were very comfortable. So it was I experienced quite a few things out there.
Wow.
You go to the eastern part of the state, and it's all desert, and we did lots of training out there, and it was different, really different. But so when I moved back home to Georgia, and the whole Bigfoot thing was, I blame it on my father, because when I was a little kid, they didn't have all these shows on TV. There was no internet back there in the late 60s, early 70s. Like I said, I'm older than dirt. But you had to go to the theater to see these documentaries about Bigfoot. And every time one came on, my dad drugged me to the theaters to see them. So I always kind of blame him for that. And but I never really thought that Georgia would be a place where there was Bigfoots. I mean, I believe in polar bears, but I don't think there's any living in Georgia, because that's not where they live up in the Arctic Circle. So I believe in moose, but I've never seen one in Georgia. So that was my rationale, that, they all live up in the Pacific Northwest or Canada or somewhere far up north like that. And I even talked to a guy right down the road. I think it was last year. I was going to go turkey hunting in this. I got a lot of national forests around my property here. And I was going to this one spot, and there was a couple walking down the road. And when I came back out, they were going the other way. And I figured they must live over here in one of these houses. So I'm going to ask him about the turkeys. And so he said, "Oh, we don't live here. We're here with my wife's parents live over here. We're from Ohio." And so I told him about, the turkey. He goes, "Oh, I'm a turkey hunter too. I love the turkey hunt." And I said, "Oh, really?" So here we go. He opens me up. Now I know he's an outdoorsman. I can ask him my question. I ask everybody. I said, "You're from Ohio." I said, "So," I just come around and ask him. I said, Have you ever seen Bigfoot? Because it's a it's pretty popular thing up there."
Uh-huh.
And he goes, "No." He goes, "No, but I believe in it." He goes, "I live on the wrong side of the state. All the Bigfoot live on the other side of the state." And I was like, "What?" I had no idea that there were, segregated like that, where they only live on one part. But I guess that's, whatever. But he goes, "Yeah, I believe in it." I was like, "You're the first guy I've talked to at this time that has ever told me, yes, I believe in this." Because everyone else, as soon as I ask them, they just start snickering, laughing, and whatever. So for me to experience these things up here, and how a lot of these people will tell you, I was out here and hair stood up on the back of my neck. Well, I don't have hair anymore, but if I did, there's only one place. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you this one. I'm not really sure, but I got to tell you this. It's another, it's also part of the Swallow Creek Wildlife Management Area. And it's, that so people know, this wildlife management area encapsulates about 19,000 square acres up here. It's a pretty large area, and there's lots of little feeder roads to go into it all around it, kind of like you got a spider, and then all the legs come out. Those roads, the legs would be the roads going in. So I had found another road that wasn't even marked. It was just off of another road, and I went down it and come to find out that's the service road for that part of the WMA. And then I found a trail that goes down the mountain. It takes about 10 minutes to get all the way down this mountain. And there's 3 food plots down there. And I find them on this map, on this hunting app that I got. And I saw them on there, and I was like, okay, I had to find the trail. I finally found the trail. And sure enough, turkeys down there are thick as peanut butter. So I decided I'm going to start turkey hunting down there. So getting down there in the dark, it's creepy to say the least. And I'm heavily armed. I not only do I carry my shotgun, I got a 10 millimeter pistol with me in case the bears want to, try to eat me for lunch. I have been paced by a coyote going down there before. I'd be walking and I hear something walking next to me, and then I stop and it would stop. I walk a little more and it would, and I thought, what is that? I turn on the light, and it's a freaking coyote. And he's got the balls to he's pacing me. I'm like, you better run. So I'm down there one morning, and I get down there before sunrise, because the sunrise is when the turkeys come off the roost, and they're going to fly down onto these fields, and that's when your best chance of getting one. So I get down there, and like I said before, there was no truck in the area, so I felt comfortable to stop there and go down and figure there's nobody else down there. Well, I get down there, and I have to pass through 2 other fields to get to the very last one, to where I want it to be. And I'm sitting down there, and this field is long, and it's shaped like a football field, long and skinny. And the very back end is the service road where the DNR comes in, and they'll plow these things in the summer or whatever, and they plant different food for the animals. And I had talked to another gentleman who lived back there. He goes, yeah, that road goes through my property. So the DNR has to come through my property to get to their road. I thought, okay, that's interesting. So I'm down there this morning, and I'm sitting there waiting. And from across this field, further down from me, way towards where that guy said his property was at, I see what I thought at the time was a person emerge out of the woods. And he kind of walked out into the field a little bit and then went down towards where that guy's house was. The thing is, I couldn't really see clearly because the sun was just starting to come up a little bit, but I know he didn't have a gun, which I thought was kind of odd, because I'm thinking, who else comes down here on this field first thing in the morning, turkey season, and is not packing a shotgun? That's just odd. And it was, I couldn't see if he was wearing camo or what. It just was like a black figure. It came out of the bushes, and I kept thinking about it. Why would somebody be over there if there was? And when I got back up, when I left, I went back up to my truck. There was no trucks up there. So if he came from up on the road, he had to walk down a pretty hazardous decline through all that brush that we've talked about. I think I would have heard him coming down. And I don't know. I didn't hear anybody out there. And to get there that way, I mean, you're really working hard to get through that stuff if you're going to come down there just to go and get on that road and walk. And then I thought, well, if it's the guy that lives here, what's he doing over there in the woods in the dark, and he doesn't have a gun, not that I could see, but it came out. So the more I thought about it, the more I kind of wondered, after I heard the knocks and stuff, I thought, was that really a man that I saw? Or I don't know. But it just, gives me pause to wonder. Because, like I said, I went back up and got in my truck, and there weren't any other trucks up there. It was just me. And it was kind of odd. So, I don't know. And honestly, to be honest with you, I don't want Bigfoot to be real, because I enjoy going out in the woods. And the thought that I'm going out there and there's some 8-9 foot, 1,000-pound gorilla out there that could rip my head off, it kind of freaks me out now. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know it. So like I said, when I go out and say my little thing, I don't want to know you're anywhere around. I don't want to smell you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to see your head peeking out from behind a tree or any of that kind of stuff. I don't want that. What I really don't want is the people that I hear them when they say they're coming up and whacking the side of their houses at night and stuff like that. I'm not going to put up with that. I mean, I got more guns than God would allow up here. And if that kind of stuff starts, I'm going to take care of business. But, just you stay out of my yard and I won't bother you. But so far, I haven't had any, problems with stuff like that. Knock on wood. Yeah, I don't want to. But, just the thought that you're going out there and there's this thing that could just rip your arms off is kind of just kind of creeps me out.
The good thing though is that I like how before you go out hunting, even though you may not entirely believe in the communication, mentally, you are still having that, you're sending that out, and so your intention is correct,
Yeah,
which,
let them know my intentions are very respectful. When I go out there, I see places. I mean, sometimes I walk for a couple of miles out there, and I'll find beer cans and trash. I'm like, who walks way out here to drink beer? Who brought a 6-pack 2 miles up the side of a mountain to drink beer and then just throw it on the ground? And I'm like, you have no respect for the woods and Mother Earth and all that kind of stuff. Because one thing I learned in the Army was trash is, the enemy can tell a lot about you by your trash. So if you leave trash on the battlefield and they find it, they can tell a lot about you. So I learned early on in my life, when you're out in the woods, everything that you bring out there with you basically goes back out with you. I mean, I went through a school when I was in the Army, which was, I don't want to mention the name of it because I don't like the politics involved with it now. One phase of it, most of it is actually here in Georgia. One phase of it is actually up here in the North Georgia mountains. And so they would give us a certain amount of food to take out on the patrols, and say if it was a 7-day patrol, you got 7 meals. When you got back, you better have either the meals that you didn't eat, which was basically most of them, or you better have the trash, because they would check to make sure that whatever you took out, you brought back. Because otherwise people can, hey, I found this toilet paper and I found these candy wrappers. These guys are very well supplied because they got candy, they got toilet paper, they got cigarettes where they threw their cigarette butts down. All those little things I've learned, over the years. So I don't leave stuff out in the woods like that. It's just a habit. And when I see people leaving trash and stuff out there, it just burns me up. I'm like, you're just destroying it for the next generation or the animals that are out here and whatnot. So, like I said, I try, if they are real, if they really are out there, I'll let them know, hey, I respect you, and I'm not out here to cause you any problems. If you really don't want me out here, throw a couple of rocks or some sticks at me, and I'll leave. Believe me, because I don't want to. I'm not the redneck that says I'm going to shoot one, because I don't believe that there's just one running around by itself. I have a feeling that they're probably family units, and if you, I just get the feeling if you mess with one of them, that the rest of them are just going to gang up on you, and that's going to be a real bad day for you.
No, I have the same thought where, I think there's a lot of other people that also have the same feeling. It kind of like you remember Jurassic Park, the first one, and you have Muldoon, tries to take down the raptor, and then the other 2 raptors show up on either side of him.
Yeah,
it's gonna be like that pretty much. Only a lot worse.
Or it'd be like how mountain gorillas live. They're big family units. And there's not just one of them out there. Matter of fact, pretty much everything out here, except for the bears. The bears are pretty much loners, unless you have a sow and her cubs. But everything else out here, I kid people. I tell them I basically have a deer farm, a deer and a turkey farm out in my front yard, because it slopes away. We're kind of up on the side of a mountain, And sometimes I have to honk the horn on my car to get the deer to move off my driveway. They're just standing there looking at me, like what? What do you want? I would like to get by, please. Can you just move out of the way, and then you can come back and eat all the grass you want. The more you eat, the less I have to mow. But and like I said, we've had hogs and stuff out here, but I do think it's strange about the hogs and the deer. Matter of fact, this month there's I think it's called Georgia Sportsman Magazine, something like that. It's a Georgia specific hunting and fishing magazine, and on the front cover is a wild boar. And so I went to the grocery store flipping through it while my wife's shopping. And you don't have to report killing hogs up here. There's no limit. The game warden told me one time, kill as many as you can, because there are just so many of them. At that time there were. And they have this state divided up into different sectors. So I looked on my sector up here in Towns County. And like I said, I don't know who's reporting to the DNR that they kill hogs, but for the whole hunting season, it said like either 1 or 2 had been reported killed. And that's odd. See, every time I tell you something like this, it makes me remember something else. So my son-in-law, the big hog hunter from Hawaii, is taking my granddaughter to school, and the school's just right around the corner down here one morning. And apparently someone had hit a hog out on the road out there. And he threw it on top of his Jeep Cherokee, brought it back to our house, and threw it out here on the side of the yard because he wanted to see how his dog would interact with it. Well, he didn't tell me about it. So, he goes to work, my granddaughter goes to school, and I come outside, let my dog out. I've got a Rottweiler and then my son-in-law's healer. And I see this thing out there in the yard. I'm like, what in the world is that? I go down there and it's a dead hog. I thought, how did this hog get in the yard and just fall over dead? So anyway, long story short, he tells me what happened. And I said, well, we can't just leave that hog laying out here in the yard. Pretty soon it's going to start to stink the place up. So I put it on the back of my truck, and I had an idea. So I'm going to take it down to the other end of the property where there's a power line cut that goes through our property. And I'm going to stake it down and get a metal stake, and I'm going to tie it down to that, and I'm going to put a camera on it, and I'm going to watch and see what comes over there to eat it. So for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days or so, I could drive by there and I could look with my binoculars and see the hog laying there. And I checked the camera a couple of times, and it was like nothing wanted to touch that hog for some strange reason. Once in a while, there'd be a crow or a buzzard come down. Nothing. And then in the afternoon, I usually go and pick up my granddaughter from school. And so on the way home, she says, Papa, let's drive by and see what's going on with the hog. Because I had already pulled the camera off of it because I needed it somewhere else, because I was like, nothing's touching that hog. I'm not wasting camera time. I've only got a few of them. And I've had bears take my cameras and chew them up before. And so the camera was gone. But we drive by and I get the binos, look, the hog is gone. I mean, completely gone. And I was like, wow, it's gone. I mean, overnight was gone. Now, when I took that hog out of my truck and I had to drag him over there to that power line, he probably weighed about 50 pounds maybe. I drug him through the leaves, and it left a trail, a big drag mark through the woods. So I go down there after I drop my granddaughter off, at the house. I go down there in my truck. The cord, which was it was like almost like parachute cord, real high tensile strength cord, had been broken. It didn't look like it had been chewed through. It looked like something had just snapped it, and the hog was gone. There were no drag marks anywhere. It's like that hog just stood up and walked off, or something came over there, snapped that cord, picked up that hog, and left with it. Now, we have a bear out here. Like I said, we have about a 600 plus pound black bear that we call Big Jim. I guess Big Jim could have picked it up in his mouth and walked off with it. I don't know. But I thought that was really odd that there wasn't a drag mark anywhere. And you can see the drag marks where I drug it over there. But so whatever, I had no idea what picked that dog up and ran off with it. There wasn't any pieces of it laying around, nothing. So
that's so weird, because I hear, man, I hear people tell me stuff similar with like elks they've shot out in Idaho, where they come back real quick, the elk is entirely gone. It's like, where did it go? There's no drag marks. It's just it's crazy stuff. Ed, you've got some really interesting things that have happened over the years, and I think if you keep doing what you're doing, stuff is just gonna keep happening to you. And I'd love to keep in touch with you.
Okay, well maybe I'll stop doing what I'm doing, because I don't really want it to keep happening to me.
That's true. I forgot. Most people are like, well, this isn't really my thing. So,
I mean, I'm fascinated by it. Like I said, it's been a part of me since I was a kid. I've watched every TV show. There's one on there I watched just to heckle, because I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
This will be my last little story. It's when I was still a policeman in Hawaii, a few years before I retired. Like I said, my wife was from Hawaii. I brought her back over here to Georgia, and we came up here to North Georgia for a day. She and I and my sister, to drive around. And I said, "This is where we're going to live." And she was like, "There's no, I don't see any houses up here. Where are we going to live?" Most of the place we was going through was national forest, so of course there was no houses. And in Hawaii, people live on top of each other, basically. So she was like, "Wow, there's nothing up here." I was like, "Yeah, it's perfect. There's no people up here to bother me, nothing." Because after being a cop, you just don't want to be around people no more. But anyway, so this was the first year that the show Finding Bigfoot was coming on. And we had gone back to Hawaii, went back home, and the very first episode was going to come on, and I couldn't wait to watch it, And my wife was laying on a little sofa in front of the TV, and she had fallen asleep. And so the show comes on, and what do you know? They're right up here in Helen, Georgia. It's a little alpine village thing, it's like 15 miles from my house. And tonight we're in the North Georgia mountains looking for Sasquatch. And I thought, oh no, if my wife sees this, she ain't never moving to Georgia. So I tried to I turned the volume down, a little bit, thinking she won't wake up. And, they do their little town hall meeting things. Well, they had their town hall meeting right there in Alpine Helen. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or whatever. It looks like a little German town. They have Oktoberfest and everything. Right. So they're having their little town hall right there, right where we went through, right by where we had lunch and everything. Right when that part of the show was airing, my wife wakes up. And she looks up at the TV and she watches it for like about 30 seconds. And she goes, "Hey, that looks like that place we went." And I'm sitting over there going, "Oh no." And she goes, I said, it is. It's Helen, Georgia. She goes, "What show is this?" And I was like, "Here we go." I said, It's Finding Bigfoot." Oh, that was it. She just lost it. Finding Bigfoot. Oh, there's Bigfoot in Georgia. I am not moving over there. No way. She just kind of lost her mind about the whole Bigfoot thing, but she got over it. But I thought I was like, what's the odds that she would wake up right when that was on, and I got to tell her that.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was kind of funny.
Oh, good stuff, Ed.
Take the good with the bad, whatever.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for coming on the show and for sharing what you've experienced over the years. And definitely,
Yeah, if anything else happens, you will be the first one.
Please reach out. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll let you know.
But
no problem.
Thank you for coming on. I greatly appreciate it.
I appreciate it too, Jeremiah. Thanks for having me.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend, Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list: the Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.